Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, I want to warn you. This video might completely change the way you see ancient Egypt, because what you're about to hear isn't just history. It's a collection of mysteries so strange that even modern scientists still argue about them. And here's a small challenge for you. Throughout this video, I'll casually say several hidden words. If you manage to collect all of them and write them together in one comment, I'll personally like your comment and subscribe to your channel. So pay close attention. Some of these words appear only once. Now, let me ask you something. How advanced do you think the ancient Egyptians really were? Stone tools, sand, ropes. That's what we're usually told. But what if that picture is incomplete? What if the ancient Egyptians knew far more about the universe, technology, and even medicine than we ever expected? Let's start with the sky. To understand ancient Egypt, we first need to abandon one dangerous assumption, that ancient people thought in simple ways. They didn't. For the Egyptians, the sky was not poetry, it was data. Every sunrise, every shadow, every moving star carried information. The heavens were a calendar, a clock, a map, and a warning system. The flooding of the Nile, the single most important event in Egyptian life, was predicted by the rising of Sirius. Miss that signal, and entire regions could starve. So astronomy wasn't philosophy. It was survival science. This is why Egyptian priests observed the sky not for decades, but for centuries. Knowledge wasn't stored in books. It was stored in temples, rituals, and memory. And that's where the Dendera Zodiac becomes impossible to ignore. At first glance, it looks decorative, almost playful. But when astronomers analyzed it using modern software, something unexpected happened. The positions of planets weren't random. They weren't symbolic approximations. They matched a real celestial configuration, one that occurs extremely rarely. This means whoever designed the zodiac either observed the sky over multiple lifetimes or inherited extremely accurate astronomical records. And here's the detail most documentaries skip. Ancient Egyptians tracked retrograde motion, the strange illusion where planets appear to move backward in the sky. That phenomenon confuses even modern observers, yet it's encoded in Egyptian symbolism, which suggests prediction, not observation. Prediction requires mathematics, and mathematics requires abstraction. So suddenly the idea of primitive stargazers collapses. Temples aligned with equinoxes, statues positioned to catch sunlight on specific days, corridors built to channel light like a blade. This wasn't worship. It was engineering using the sky. And it forces us to ask, if Egyptians understood cosmic cycles this deeply, what other systems were they quietly mastering? The Abydos carvings are unsettling for one simple reason. They don't feel ancient. Not because they look modern, but because they break Egyptian rules. Egyptian art was obsessively controlled. For over 3,000 years, proportions barely changed. Symbols followed strict grammar. Deviations were rare, almost forbidden. So when something strange appears, it matters. The shapes at Abydos don't look like random erosion. They look composed, balanced, intentional. Egyptologists explain this as a palimpsest. Overlapping inscriptions eroded over time. And yes, palimpsests exist. But here's what skeptics noticed. In most palimpsests, overlapping symbols create visual chaos. At Abydos, they create recognizable forms. That's statistically strange. Even strangers where these carvings are located. This isn't a public wall. It's deep inside a sacred temple, a temple dedicated to Osiris. god of death, rebirth, and hidden knowledge. Not a place for decoration, a place for secrets. And here's a thought that changes everything. What if these shapes weren't machines, but metaphors? Ancient cultures often described complex ideas using imagery that made sense to them. We may be interpreting symbols with modern eyes, seeing technology where they saw concepts, movement, control, power, or something lost to time. History isn't just what survived, it's also what didn't. And sometimes what didn't survive leaves shadows, shapes we can't fully explain. Which brings us to something much smaller, but no less disturbing. In 1898, inside a sealed tomb in Saqqara, archaeologists found something that didn't belong. Not because it was mysterious, but because it was practical. A small wooden object, about 14 centimeters long. At first glance, it looked like a bird, so they labeled it that way, the Saqqara Bird, and moved on. But the problem wasn't what it looked like. The problem was what it did. Decades later, aviation engineers examined the object and noticed something disturbing. This bird has a fixed wing shape, a vertical tail stabilizer, a body designed for airflow, no feathers, no legs, no decorative details, just aerodynamics. When replicas were built and tested in wind tunnels, the results were uncomfortable. It glided. Not randomly, not briefly. It generated lift. And lift isn't accidental. To create lift, you need understanding, even if intuitive, of airflow, balance, and weight distribution. Ancient Egyptians supposedly had no concept of flight beyond mythology. Yet here was an object that behaves like a glider. Skeptics argue it was a toy. But here's the problem with that explanation. Children's toys in ancient Egypt were painted, playful, symbolic. This object is bare, functional, even unfinished, as if decoration was irrelevant. Then there's the tail. No known bird in nature has a vertical tail like that. Aircraft do, which leads to a deeper question. What if this wasn't meant to fly high? What if it was a model? Engineers don't start by building full-scale machines. They test shapes, they experiment, they scale down. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Ancient Egyptian temples contain reliefs, showing gods flying across the sky, not with wings, but with rigid shapes, boats that float in the air, crafts that move silently. We dismiss these as mythology. But mythology often preserves ideas when technology disappears. If flight existed briefly and was lost, would it survive as legend? The Saqqara Bird may not be proof, but it is a question carved in wood, and history doesn't like unanswered questions. If there is one image that refuses to die, it's this one. A long glass-like bulb, a serpent inside, a cable-like object connected to a pillar, the so-called Dendera Light. Mainstream Egyptology calls it symbolic. They say it represents the lotus flower, the god Harsamtis, the act of creation. And symbolically, that works. But symbolically correct does not mean physically meaningless. The problem is the details. Inside Egyptian tombs, there is no soot, no smoke residue, no signs of oil lamps. Yet these chambers were carved deep underground, dark, lightless. So how are they illuminated? Torches would leave traces. Oil lamps would stain walls. They didn't. Now consider the relief itself. The bulb shape matches a Crookes tube, a 19th century device used to demonstrate early electrical discharge. The snake resembles plasma filaments. The pillar looks suspiciously like an insulator. Is this coincidence or convergence? Skeptics say electricity requires infrastructure, wires, generators, metal. True, but ancient Egypt worked with copper extensively. They used electrochemical reactions unintentionally in gilding. The famous Baghdad battery shows electricity doesn't require modern theory, only experimentation. And here's the most overlooked detail. Egyptians never depicted random objects. Everything had purpose. If this was pure myth, why depict it with such mechanical precision? Why not a sun disk? Why not abstract light? Why this specific form? Perhaps the Dendera Light wasn't a lamp. Perhaps it was a metaphor for controlled energy. Or perhaps it was something else entirely. History teaches us a dangerous lesson. Just because a civilization didn't survive with its technology doesn't mean it never had it. Knowledge can regress. Skills can vanish. And when they do, future generations call it myth. Granite is not supposed to obey. It is one of the hardest stones on Earth, dense, brittle, unforgiving. Even today, shaping granite requires diamond-tipped tools, high-speed drills, industrial pressure. Yet ancient Egypt didn't just shape granite, they mastered it. In Aswan, unfinished obelisks lie frozen in time, still attached to the bedrock. Their surfaces are smooth, flat, precise, not cracked, not splintered. According to official history, Egyptians worked granite using copper tools, stone hammers, sand as an abrasive. But here's the problem. Copper is softer than granite. Sand helps polish, not cut with millimeter precision. And yet drill marks found in granite blocks show something shocking. They spiral, not randomly, uniformly. Modern engineers measured the feed rate, the speed at which the drill moved through the stone. The result? It exceeds what modern diamond drills can achieve today. This isn't speculation, it's measurement. So, how is it done? One controversial theory suggests sound, acoustic resonance. Every material has a frequency at which it becomes unstable. Hit that frequency, and the material weakens. Modern experiments show that intense vibration can fracture stones, soften metals, reduce structural resistance. Ancient cultures spoke constantly about sound, chants, hymns, tuning forks made of stone. Even the Egyptian word for creation involved vibration. What if sound wasn't spiritual? What if it was practical? Imagine a tool that doesn't cut, but destabilizes. A device that turns granite temporarily obedient. No sparks, no heat, no debris, just controlled resonance. Is this proven? No. But neither is the official explanation. And when two theories fail, the simpler one is usually wrong. The precision of Egyptian granite work isn't impressive. It's disturbing because it suggests knowledge that appeared suddenly peaked, instantly, vanished completely. Civilizations usually improve gradually. Egypt didn't. It started perfect and then slowly forgot how. The Great Pyramid of Giza is often called a tomb, but no body was ever found inside. No inscriptions, no burial texts, no mummies, just stone, perfect stone, aligned with true north with an error of less than 0.05 degrees. Even today, that accuracy is difficult without satellites. So how did they do it? Using shadows? Stars? Luck? Possibly. But alignment is only the beginning. The pyramid's internal structure is strange. There are chambers that serve no ritual purpose, passageways that lead nowhere, shafts angled with extreme precision. Some researchers believe the pyramid wasn't built for someone. It was built for something. The king's chamber contains granite beams, weighing up to 70 tons, stacked with microscopic precision. Granite again, always granite. Why? Granite is piezoelectric. Under pressure, it generates electrical charge. The pyramid is under immense pressure. Add vibration, earthquakes, wind, even footsteps, and the structure becomes active. Now consider this. The pyramid sits on a limestone plateau, a natural insulator. Its outer casing was polished white limestone, reflective and conductive. Some theories propose the pyramid functioned as an energy concentrator, a resonance chamber, a stabilizing structure for Earth itself. Mainstream science rejects this. But mainstream science also once rejected. Continental drift meteor impacts bacteria causing disease. The pyramid's dimensions encode mathematical constants. Pi, phi, Earth's circumference. Coincidence? Maybe. But coincidences don't stack this neatly. And then there's the age. Water erosion patterns on the Sphinx suggest it may predate dynastic Egypt by thousands of years, meaning the civilization that built the core structures may not be the one we credit. What if the Egyptians inherited something they didn't fully understand? What if they preserved, but could not recreate? The pyramid may not be a machine. It may be a message, a monument saying, "We were here. We knew more than you think. And you are not the first." At some point, every discussion about ancient Egypt reaches a dangerous crossroads. Either we accept that ancient humans were capable of extraordinary things, or we assume someone else helped them. This is where the word aliens enters the conversation. For many people, that word immediately kills credibility. But let's slow down. The idea of non-human intelligence influencing early civilizations didn't appear on the internet. It appeared because too many questions had no comfortable answers. Ancient Egyptian gods didn't behave like abstract forces. They arrived, they taught, they ruled, they descended from the sky. They gave laws, architecture, medicine, and agriculture. And then, they left. Osiris taught civilization and was killed. Thoth brought knowledge and writing. Horus ruled from the sky. These aren't vague metaphors. They are consistent narratives, repeated for thousands of years. Skeptics say, this is mythology. But mythology is not fiction. It is memory. Distorted, symbolic, compressed. Ancient cultures didn't separate history and religion. They encoded events into stories that could survive collapse. Now look at how the gods are depicted. Elongated skulls, non-human proportions, strange headgear. Royal families practiced cranial deformation, stretching skulls from infancy. Why? Pure aesthetics or imitation? Imitation of something real? Akhenaten is the strangest example. His body proportions are abnormal. His face is elongated. His religion was revolutionary. He abolished all gods except one, a 10. Not a human-shaped deity. A disk of light, a cosmic object. He destroyed the old priesthood and centralized knowledge. After his death, his legacy was erased. Statues destroyed, names removed, history rewritten. Why? Because failed religious reforms happen all the time. But total erasure suggests fear. Now, consider this possibility. What if the gods were not aliens from another planet, but survivors? What if a previous advanced civilization existed on Earth, destroyed by catastrophe, and a small group survived? Flood myths exist everywhere. So do stories of teachers arriving after disaster. Egyptian civilization appears fully formed. Writing, architecture, medicine, no slow learning curve, just emergence. That is not how civilizations normally work, unless knowledge was inherited. And if knowledge was inherited, what else was passed down? By now, one thing should be clear. Ancient Egypt doesn't fit comfortably into our understanding of history. Too many anomalies, too much precision, too many unanswered questions. Meteorite iron worked with surgical precision. Medicine centuries ahead of its time. Architecture that still defies replication. And underground, always underground. Hidden chambers, sealed passages, unfinished corridors. Places not meant for worship. Places meant for preservation or concealment. Consider this. Egyptians obsessed over the afterlife, but not in a vague spiritual sense. They preserved bodies with extreme care. They mapped the soul's journey like an engineer maps a route. What if afterlife didn't mean heaven? What if it meant continuity, survival of knowledge, survival of identity, survival of something beyond death? The pyramids may not be tombs. They may be time capsules, not for us, but for the future, or for someone expected to return. And now we arrive at the most uncomfortable thought of all. What if the ancient Egyptians didn't see themselves as primitive? What if we are the ones living in the shadow of a forgotten peak? History is written by survivors, but not all survivors understand what they inherited. Knowledge can degrade. Meaning can be lost. Technology can become ritual. And ritual can become myth. So when we look at ancient Egypt and ask, were they helped? We may be asking the wrong question. The better question is, what did they know that we forgot? And if fragments of that knowledge still exist, hidden in stone, symbols, and silence, then maybe the greatest discovery hasn't been made yet. Maybe it's waiting, buried, like Egypt itself. And remember, throughout this video, I said several hidden words. If you caught all of them, write them together in one comment below. I'll personally like your comment and subscribe back. So, were the Egyptians alone, or were they never meant to be?